Hi, everybody. Welcome to our channel, our Scientology Stories, Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and you're here with our live stream on Saturday. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Janice Gillham Grady. Hi, Janice. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Aloha, Mark, and g'day, everyone else.
Aloha, everybody.
It's a hot day here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think it's going to be between 112 and 114 Fahrenheit. Pretty hot, pretty hot. But this is the time of year that we basically hibernate, because if we lived in Chicago in January or February, we'd be hibernating from the ice and snow. So we have the opposite effect. We have to hibernate during July when it's so doggone hot.
Yeah, usually have the monsoons by now, but we haven't yet. So it'll cool off soon.
Anyway, Janice, it's also a special day, something that you don't know about. Do you want to guess what the special day is today?
Okay. What's the special day?
Well, we've done so many videos that I officially am repeating an Aloha shirt because I've gone through all of my Aloha shirts. We've done 30 some odd videos. And so this is a repeat shirt, everybody. It's the first time I've worn a separate shirt or a shirt a second time on here.
You lied to me. You lied to me. You said you had about 50 shirts, not 30.
Well, I obviously underestimated a little bit, but still over 30 is pretty doggone good.
That's very good.
Everybody get in the comments section here. Tell us where you're watching from. I saw somebody from Bakersfield. Where else have we got people from, Janice? Do you see any other? Chelsea, Massachusetts.
Seattle, Clearwater, Chad. Well, he's not in Clearwater, but he's here.
Long Island, New York. I'm sure we've got people from all over the world. We do. And we appreciate you all being here. I'm hopeful that Goldie's in here. Thank you, Goldie, for moderating. We really appreciate that in the chat. And like I said, it's officially a second wear for this shirt on the channel. So, that's what happens. Anyway, in the meantime, what I would like to say is if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. We appreciate the support. And we're going to be doing this. We've got the show's going to be, we're going to cover our news of the week, but then also we have a special guest. His name's Phil Jones, and we're going to bring him on and talk about something about him. And then we're going to go and talk about David Miscavige, and was he really appointed to be the successor to L. Ron Hubbard? And then finally, we're going to do question and answers. So if you've got a question, please write question in the heading, before in the chat. It's easy for us to spot it. You can also super chat us or also super sticker us. We appreciate that support. And and then Janice, we're going to do a book giveaway, right?
Yeah, yes, we are. We're going to give away my first book. But if the winner has this book, we'll give away the second book.
Yeah, and then we'll ship it to you. It's anyway, we'll ship it to you. We're going to do that giveaway right before we do the question and answer. So stick around for that.
Let me add something there.
Yeah.
We ship for free in the U.S. Outside the U.S., prices have gone up, and it's like nearly $30 to ship a book to Canada and the U.K.
Yeah, it's much more expensive than the book itself, just to actually do the shipping.
Yeah,
so anyway,
the books go to those in America. Sorry.
Yeah, if you're in a non-US and you win the book, I mean, you could donate it, or we'll work something out. Just you can always email us, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Okay, anybody? So here we go. We'll start this off, Janice, with our news of the week, our onion peeling news of the week for everybody here. Okay. The first thing at last Saturday, we did a live stream about the wedding of David and Shelley Miscavige. We showed photographs from the wedding, and we discussed their relationship. And as part of that, we had a surprise special guest, Thomas Francis, who was Shelley's former boyfriend, right, Janice?
That's right. Yeah, it was great. It was like he shows up in the chat or in the comments section of one of our videos that we did. And then I was like, oh, my God, let me find him. And I talked to him Friday night last week, and then Saturday he was on the air with us. It just all fell into place.
Yeah, and he's actually, he's watching our channel, and he contacted me yesterday, and he's peeling the onion too. I mean, we were talking about memories that were over 40 years ago for him, and he's really appreciating the different videos and stuff we have, as well as on other channels. So it was just great to talk to him, and that was a nice surprise. So if you haven't seen that wedding video, go back and watch that. It's on our channel. Okay, and then I did an interview with Aaron Smith Levin Tuesday about Scientology tried to muzzle me. And what this was, Aaron had gone over a program from 2006 that the Office of Special Affairs for Scientology used against another former Scientology executive who was speaking out. And then I called Aaron and I said, well, I have a program that was written on me at the same time in 2006 that Mark Headley had sent to me. And I hadn't seen it before. I got it a few weeks before. And so I went over the details with Aaron, and we decided to do a show, and he interviewed me on that. And we go into detail about the different spying they had, the friend, Janis, who also spied on you as well. And, it was a really well done interview. And I was happy to get that story out there. Janis, did you watch it?
Yeah, I did watch it. I thought you did a very good job.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And we all had this stuff going on, it wasn't just me. And so anyway, we were exposing Office of Special Affairs, as Denver Steve-O likes to say, OSA is poo. And so we did that, and it was very well received. So anyway, then we also put out a video a couple of days ago as our part 4 of our interview with Ken Urquhart, who used to be L. Ron Hubbard's butler at St. Hill, and then he was his personal communicator, both on the flagship Apollo and in Clearwater, Florida. And it was a very personal interview, as his reflections and remembrances about L. Ron Hubbard. So if you haven't seen that interview, please watch it. It's on our channel. I think you'll enjoy it. Okay, Janis? And yes. We'll go to the next thing here. Channel memberships. We want to mention again that we appreciate the people who have joined our channel as members. We appreciate all of our subscribers, but just to reiterate, you can go and you can become a member on 3 different levels. Our Peeling Supporter is our basic level, Peeling Professionals middle, and Peeling Master is our top level. It's voluntary. It's a monthly membership, and you can cancel at any time. And how do I join? The reason we're doing this is that we've had people reach out to us that don't understand exactly how to join. And the way you do it is you go on a computer, laptop, or Android phone. iPhones and iPads, they don't have the join function, but you go to our channel homepage or any of our videos and look for the join button. On this one here, it's below the word Grady on our homepage. And then on the right-hand photo, it's an interview I did with Gary Jackson, Moorhead, and you can see the join there next to the word analytics. All you have to do is click on that, and YouTube will take care of the rest. It's very easy to do. Okay. And we're in a competition right now. We've got to get 30 members we've got 3 more weeks to get 30 members, and we're well on our way to that. But we would really appreciate anybody who wants to join. Even if you do the basic, the Peeling Supporter, it's just $3.99. You can join and support us. We would really appreciate it. And then later, if you decide you don't want it to continue, there's no cancellation fee or anything like that. You can do that at any time, right, Janis?
That's right, Mark. And the higher level, which is called Peeling Master, that actually includes a personal phone call with Mark and I, and an autographed book, one of my books. So I'm looking forward to actually getting to know some of our subscribers and fans out there. And please, go for the Peeling Master if you want to have a one-on-one chat with Mark and I, or just me, or just Mark, whatever you choose.
Yeah, and that's monthly. That's monthly. Once a month, we're going to do that. That's the top level. But also, though, at our middle level, we're going to do a live stream just with the members on those levels once a month as well. So you'll be able to have connection. We'll be able to talk to you personally. If you've got personal questions you want to ask us, you can do that as well. But if you just want to be a basic supporter and show support, we would really appreciate it. And like we said, we want to thank you all for all the support that you give us for our channel. We do this in order to get the truth out there and to help other people and to peel that onion, right, Janis?
That's correct, Mark. The onion is peeling.
Okay, great. All right, though. So, Janice, without further ado,
Yeah.
we're ready
You know,
to go ahead.
I'm ready. Okay. This is my weekly segment on Scientology out of communication. In the past, I already called out Liz Ingber and Nettie Alcock, the two Barton sisters who haven't communicated with their parents since the 80s. And the mother is now in a nursing home and would love to hear from her daughters before she passes away. And the father would love to hear from him too. We are still looking for Andrew. We've got various leads on that. And then last week I called out Marion and Samantha Powell. Their mother is going to turn 92 next month, and she hasn't heard from them since the 90s. And these are executives of the Sea organization who should know their basic Scientology is communication. That's where it all starts. That's what your backyard is all about, is getting in communication with yourself, with your friends, with your family. Now, in 1968, Hubbard did away with the condition of disconnection because he felt he had technology to handle that. And then because crew members were still not writing their parents and it was creating bad publicity, he then came out and actually assigned a few crew members a condition of baby. Baby because they had to be told to write to their parents or to their brothers or their sisters. So that is why I am on a roll of calling out these executives to get them to start writing their parents. The parents are getting older. Yes, they might have been declared many years ago, but you know what? Most of those people declared today and in those years ago aren't suppressive persons. They're what Scientologists call ARC broken. That means they are upset. Affinity, reality, communication broken. So that's what this is all about. Let's get in ARC, which is a basic Scientology, affinity, reality, communication, and let's start communicating because that's the only way things are going to get better, not cutting people off. Shunning is wrong. So with that, I am going to introduce our guest who has been disconnected from by his children, and he has put a lot of money and time into trying to be connected to them. Please welcome Phil Jones.
Hi, Phil.
Hey, Mark. Hi, Janis. Good to see
Hi,
you guys.
Phil. Good to have you on the show with us.
Yeah, we miss the old Vegas days. Actually, we're in Canada now, so you're talking about the heat. I never minded that in the summertime. Yeah. It didn't really bother me that much.
I don't either. If I go outside, it's like not for long, and then I have a swimming pool, so I just go in the pool.
Yeah.
How long were you in Las Vegas?
Altogether about 5 years. We were kind of back and forth between Clearwater and Vegas, but I think 4 or 5 years at least.
So you went from the swamp to the frying pan, right?
Exactly. I know, from the highest humidity you can get to the lowest humidity you can get.
And then to Canada.
And then to Canada. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, Phil. So why don't you go ahead and give our viewers a little bit of your background and your story.
Well, my wife and I are both from Canada, and we got into Scientology separately, but we were only teenagers. So, and back then there was no internet or anything like that. So we kind of fell into it. We met in Scientology in Toronto, 72. And we've been in all together for about 40 years. But in 89, we ended up moving to Clearwater, Florida. We got green cards. So we were able to move into the States and moved fairly near to Flag. And we had, our kids, they went into Scientology-based school. It was True School at the time. It turned into Adelphi. So they grew up, our kids grew up in and around Scientology from, basically from the time they were born. And so, they kind of, Michael and Emily both ended up in the Sea Org. Clear, especially in the Scientology schools, they're kind of recruitment fields for Flag, and they both kids ended up, and Emily ended up going into RTC and ultimately working directly with Miscavige, and our son Mike ended up joining at Celebrity Center, and he's a musician, and he had gone from Clearwater to California to pursue a music career. And every once in a while, he'd call me up and say, "Dad, they want me to join staff at Pasadena." Or something. No, keep on your music career, I say. And then it was like, "Oh, and Orange County wants me to join staff." I said, "No, stay on the music." And one day he was at Celebrity Center, and they promised him he could continue music. And he ended up signing up, and it didn't last long. Music, I don't think he's played his guitar for years and years now.
Let me show a picture of this is you and your kids here, right?
Right. That's Mike and Emily on the ends there. And that picture was
love of the wife.
Yeah, that picture was not that long before we were kind of outed and disconnected.
Okay.
So, and then when my wife and I kind of drifted, we were never really as gung-ho as some in Scientology, and we were we had kind of drifted off, weren't really doing much, but we were under what's called under the radar. I assume some of your listeners may have heard what that means is you're out of Scientology, but you're pretending to be in because you know that if you kind of leave that you can sort of lose your family, your business, your, everything, all social contact. So we stayed under the radar. And then I have a sister who's OT8, and she flew down from Canada to confront us on the whole concept of, hey, you're not doing anything, and are you disaffected of Scientology? And anyway, long story short, she went to Flag, reported us, and then overnight we were done. Everybody disconnected. It was amazing how fast that went.
Wow.
So we hung around a little bit, but not very long after that. There was no, like, business-wise, dried up. I went to a guy I had worked for a number of years, made him a lot of money. He just said one thing. He said, "If you're not in good standing with the church, you can't work for me." So,
but you weren't even declared a suppressive person.
Well, I've never seen anything in writing, but
right.
it got, how in those days, that was, I think, 2009, in that time period, there were a lot of people that were being sort of outed just for having the wrong friends on Facebook. There was the whole Facebook police thing going on at that time. So, and that was the reason my sister had come down. She said, "Well, you got to disconnect from this person." Which every once in a while she would do this in the past. You need to disconnect from this person, take them off your Facebook list. Now, I would do it just so I wouldn't argue. But in the end, it was after a while, I said to her, "You can't tell me who I can be friends with or not friends with." So anyway,
they're the friends police. It's crazy.
Exactly. They were the friends police. So that's when we kind of moved out to Vegas. I had a friend out there who had offered me some work, and we went out there, and that's how we ended up in Vegas. And from there, we would drive to LA to see if we could contact our kids, because they had gone out of touch with us at that point, along with everybody else disconnecting from us. And we weren't getting anywhere. We had gone down to Celebrity Center, and they wouldn't let us on the property at all. It would, we tried calling numerous times. We'd go park in that parking lot, that little supermarket across the road.
Yeah.
Just to see if we could see our son there. And then security would come out, and they'd be taking pictures of our license plate, and they would hang around, one near the front of the car, one near the back of the car. So around that time, somebody had referred a TV show to us. They were doing like a documentary style TV show. So we connected up with them, and we were just trying to think of different things to do to connect with our kids. So, we tried a number of different things. We did a welfare check. We did some protesting at Author Services, where our daughter, she went from RTC and she went into Author Services, which is now typically run as Galaxy Press, which is the division that sells Hubbard fiction books.
Right.
And so she's there now, and she's actually married to the president of Galaxy Press, John Goodwin. And we see her in pictures sometimes. Right now, she's at Comic-Con in San Diego.
Oh,
So anybody in San Diego wants to go and say hello to our daughter Emily, and just tell her, call your mother. um, so one of the things we did to try to reach our son, because it was a little more difficult to see anything going on with him, is I had this idea of just, he's missing. I thought, you know what, that picture there was taken the last time I think we actually saw him. He was in Clearwater setting up that big tent for the IAS event when they
Mhm.
had it there that one time. And we sat in the car. I had brought him a Starbucks coffee. We were sitting there, took a picture, and I'd go there every day when he was working there. I'd go there every day and see him, and we'd spend some time together. So then what we did is, when we went to LA from Vegas, and I had designed a missing poster, and we had a bunch of them printed up, and we just walked around the Celebrity Center, and we handed out these posters. We put them up on posts around there. That phone number is still a good phone number, by the way. It goes to voicemail now, but it's still a good phone number. I kept that number. You never know. It's been a long time, but
Yeah.
and Scientology sent their people out and behind us, and they would just be taking the posters down. But people were responding really well to them in the restaurants across the street. In fact, one person had taken one of these posters home and posted it, I guess, in their laundry room. Somebody took a picture of it. It went on Instagram, went viral. There was a lot of action on that. And that was kind of one of the early things that we did. And around that time is when we also had the LAPD do a welfare check on him, just because we hadn't heard anything from the kids for several years. So it was unsuccessful, and we were around Celebrity Center at the time and walking away back to our car, and I looked over and I saw one of the security people just laughing at us. I was like furious. Sorry, I get emotional on this one.
Okay. We understand.
Anyway, I told him, I said, look, we'll be back, and we'll be back bigger. So, we went back to Vegas, and we were kind of brainstorming. A couple of people had mentioned billboards, but at the time it was just really expensive to do billboards. So we kind of brought back the idea a bit, and I had a friend who's a graphic artist, and he designed a billboard for us, an amazing design, amazing message. And so we put it out there to see if we could raise some money for it, and I think we were at about $70 after a week or two, and it wasn't going anywhere. And then Tony Ortega did a story on it for us, and on his underground bunker at TonyOrtega.org. And within 2 days, we had enough for several months of the billboard. So we set up a launch date with a company. We'd set up with a company, signed a contract. They did the artwork. Everything was printed, and we were ready to go. And the day before, they called us up and said, sorry, can't do it. Scientology had gone in there and influenced them somehow and forced not to do it. So we got another company, and same thing. We were ready to go. Literally, in fact, this one was actually a half a block away from Author Services, where behind there is where Miscavige has his, he used to live back there.
Right.
So it would have been right down the street. They would come out their front door, and they'd be able to see that billboard right down the street. Again, artwork was done, printed up, and the day before, got a call, sorry, can't do it. So we got a third company, and I talked to him. I told him what happened. He said, we will not desert you. We'll do it for you. And so we got a billboard up, and we set a launch date, and we went down there, and we got there, and there was press everywhere. I don't even know how that happened. Somebody had gotten the message out, and I think partly because, like, people were saying, well, why do you keep announcing that you're going to have this come up when Scientology keeps shutting you down? But I think that added to the whole story of the thing, that got out enough to different news organizations, that when we got to the launch of the Billboard, there were a dozen or more news, and some big news. There was Good Morning America, Today Show, Inside Edition, and they were inviting us on their show. We were on the Today Show. We were on Good Morning America. We, just after the Billboard went up, we were on all of these shows. So we started to get all this press from all these different places.
There's the billboard there behind you, right, in that photo?
Yes, that's the billboard that we launched. That was right near the stadium. It was a little, people asked, it's a little bit far away from the Scientology buildings, but it wasn't that likely that our kids were going to see it anyway. We were just trying to get the message out there. And we ended up with that billboard getting international press, BBC, all over the world, daily, what's that, a big, anyway, radio interviews we were doing. And that's part of the news scrum that they had, that you can barely see us in there, but and it was all being recorded too for the TV show. Unfortunately, they never did put the TV show on. I think at the time what might have been happening, I know that Leah was doing a show as well, and I guess the studio just looked at it, but they had a celebrity on one side and just us little folk on the other. So in the end, they just went that way, and I understand that. The main thing for us was the coverage, and Leah's show had a huge impact. So more power to it. I was totally supportive of that. It was tough. I'm never really that good in front of a camera, so it was difficult and really an emotional time for us. I mean, we went through hell. And that person in the background there is Jamie DeWolf. That's L. Ron Hubbard's great grandson.
I've got a closer picture of him right there, right on the left.
Yeah. The other gentleman with the glasses there, that's Gotti Schwartz from the Today Show. And he did a interview with us as well for the Today Show. It was hugely successful. The whole Billboard thing, it just went viral. If you look up Phil Jones Scientology, then you'll see tons of stories, on the internet, and it's mostly about the Billboard. And also what will come up as the hate pages that Scientology set up on us. So
we all
have them.
I know. It's kind of lame what they put up there. And it's all, I went through it once. I usually don't pay attention to it because I don't think that many people even find those things or read them. But one day I just thought, I just want to show people the lies of what Scientology does. So I did a whole write-up. I went through each point that they had on there and said, because they'll take these little points and they'll exaggerate them or lie about them or whatever. One thing, when we were doing the welfare check, and we were at the police station, the LAPD and the Hollywood division, and I had asked a question or had mentioned something about possibly going to, I can't remember what the department is, just about, what's the government office, like where you'd go and complain about somebody missing or something? Not the police, but
Missing Persons Bureau.
No, it was like anyway, I had just mentioned it and we never did anything with it. So if you go on their website, they'll say that, and they had gone to this place and they'd reported it to this place, but we never did. So the only way they could have known, the Scientology could have known that for their hate website, was somebody at the LAPD would have told them, because there's no other way that they could have known that.
Yeah.
Because it was one mention we did of that. We never pursued it. The only time I ever mentioned it was in the LAPD office when we were interviewing with the officer there.
Did
So-
they ever have PIs following you?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
We were followed, especially when we were doing the Billboard launch in Clearwater. When we arrived there, right off the bat, there was somebody following us. But I know we lived in Clearwater for 25 years. I knew the area like the back of my hand. So
Right.
it was literally 3 minutes I had lost them. And then we went over to do the show, and then we ended up doing some shooting around Flag, some protesting around Flag. And as I was leaving, I got a phone call from one of the producers saying, there's a vehicle following you. And I said, yeah, I saw him behind me. And and this guy was hard to I found out later that he was the head of the PI company. I guess because I'd lost one of his employees, that he said, oh, I'll show you how it's done. And so I just said to him, we were going to see our grandkids, and I said, I don't want to drag this PI down there. So I turned down a street and I stopped. The guy went flying past me. I turned around, went on the street, turned in, went behind a building, and we saw him going up and down and the street. He couldn't find us. We waited a little bit, and then we went on, never saw him again. But the occasional that we saw PIs the odd time, they might have been around more, but didn't really notice.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care too much. What are they going to see? We didn't have really exciting lives
Right.
for them.
So you had the billboards in California and then in Clearwater, Florida, both?
We had the first one in Los Angeles, and then we had the second one in Clearwater. We had a third one we put up near their new media building, the Scientology media production.
Yeah.
We had it just down. You could see the building, the Scientology buildings from the billboard, and that was so. Altogether, we did 3 billboards.
And then it was hard to see. I said call me, but did it say anything else on the billboard? It's hard to see in the photo.
It has our website on there, which has some information on Disconnection and what Scientology says about it, what the truth is. We have some stories in there. I haven't really done much with it in the last number of years, but it's still there if someone finds it. So it says, to my loved one in Scientology, call me. And then it has the website on the bottom right, which is stopscientologydisconnection.com.
And what's amazing about this is all this money, tens of thousands of dollars, is spent on PIs and trying to handle the bad publicity this creates, when all they need to do is pull those staff members into ethics and say, sit down and write a letter to your parents, or here's a phone, make a phone call. It's as simple as that, but they have to, never defend, always attack.
Yeah. The scary thing is that you could almost say to them, how are you going to handle the planet if you can't even handle your own family?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like where, you think you're handling the planet, but your own family is falling apart.
Janice, I want to show the policy now. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a policy from L. Ron Hubbard, 15 November 1968. And it says, since we can now handle all types of cases, disconnection as a condition is canceled. L. Ron Hubbard, 1968.
Right. And you know what? I don't care how many advices there might have been written for someone to be disconnected from or whatever. Advices never, what's my word? Anyway.
They're not senior. They're not senior
Right.
to policy.
But
Policy is senior to advices.
Yeah, but you know how I refer to it though. I never say that Scientology has a policy of disconnection. I'll say they have a practice of disconnection. Whether they have a policy or not, they practice disconnection.
Yeah.
Yes, they practice it, but they do have a policy to not disconnect.
Yeah, they do, but they'll claim they don't have a policy. But that's
Right.
why I say that it's a practice.
Yeah.
If I say it's a policy, they'll say, well, we don't have a policy. But if I say you have a practice, they can't really deny that because it's very evident.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. They do practice disconnection and shunning.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and they do.
lived it. I lived it with my own father, and that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the result? Did you ever hear anything, any peep or anybody reach
Well,
out to you at all from the
when we
billboards?
were going to Clearwater, we drove because I know that Scientology tracks their flights. They have their, however they do it. So we ended up driving from Vegas to Clearwater, and we were in a hotel, and my phone rang, and it was our daughter. And we could tell she wasn't alone. You could hear like people there. I guess she was being coached. And she said, if you want a relationship with Mike and I, meaning her and Mike, you'd have to not do the billboard, stop criticizing Scientology, and God, I can't even remember the other one. This is years ago. And I told her, I said, I'll do all three of those things. No problem. I'll do all three of those things if you'll end disconnection for all the thousands of people that have been disconnected by Scientology. Because I couldn't very well, I'd gone through all of this and all these people who supported the billboard, the number of people that were disconnected, that contacted us, the stories were horrific. I couldn't say, oh yeah, well, it's good for us. We can just, end it right now. And those people are all on their own. Plus the thing is, you can't trust Scientology.
No.
You can't trust them. If I would have agreed to it, they would have said, okay, well, good. You've stopped the billboard. Oh, you've stopped the TV show, and you've stopped criticizing Scientology. So now you have to get on the conditions. Now you have to pay. You have to buy this level of IAS membership, and now you have to donate to a new building or whatever it is. It would never happen. And the contact would be just so peripheral anyway. If it was there, it would be like, oh yeah, we're doing fine, Dad. Okay, thanks very much. Got to run, busy, bye, and that would be it. It wouldn't be real contact.
Right.
But I just didn't trust Scientology to follow through on that anyway. So
Right.
so the conversation didn't go that well. Because I kept saying, yeah, I'll do all those three things, no problem. And then she was getting coached on. And eventually she just was disconnected. I don't think it was her, because halfway through a sentence that she was saying, the thing disconnected and never heard back. So, and then our son, when we were doing the, it was a tough one.
It's okay.
One out. When we were doing the welfare check, I had the police try to talk to him. So they actually went on the phone, and they said, well, we talked to him on the phone. I said, well, how do you know it was him? I said, you need to get eyes on. I want to make sure that he's okay.
Yeah.
So so they went in to Celebrity Center, and they came out and they said, well, he's not there. And they gave us an address, and we'll go to check the address. You wait here. So we waited. They went, and then we waited maybe 20 minutes later. One of the officers called me, and they said, Scientology gave us a fake address. There's nobody here. There's nothing.
Ah.
And they were pissed. They were really pissed. And I said, well, what are you going to do? He says, you leave it with us. And half an hour later, one of the officers called me and said, we found him. We tracked him down through his wife's parents, whose father was apparently in the hospital. And they went down there. And I guess our son was there, surrounded by Scientology handlers. Like, I don't know how many there were. He didn't say how many, but it was more than one. So one officer got him alone and said to him, he said, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Phil.
I can get you out of here right now. Anyway, he refused, but he handed his phone to Mike and said, you talk to your father. And anyway, the phone rang. I got on there. Mike said, basically, I never want to talk to you again. And that was it.
Yeah.
And that's the last time you talked to him.
Last time I talked to him.
Yeah.
So,
it's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's criminal. It's outrageous. It's something that should never happen. over stupid things like this.
Yeah.
And you should know, Phil, that deep down, that's not what your son really thinks.
I know. I know how the conditioning goes. We were in for 40
Yeah.
years, and
Yeah.
it's tough. You gotta, you balance. There's that whole thing of having two separate thoughts opposite in your head. It's that um, you know, and we had it numerous times throughout the years. But I just hopefully one day they'll get out. It's just tough to have a conversation with them. There's no way to reach them at this point.
Right. But yeah, and you know what though, Phil? At least when the point does come that they want to leave, they know you'll be there for them.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
And that's what counts right now, is you and Willie will both be there for them. And I think they both will know that when they make that decision.
Yeah. I think the tough thing for people in the Sea Org must be, we were never in the Sea Org, but it's always that first step out the door. Where do you go from there? Like if you step out the door, you guys were in the Sea Org. I don't know how you did it. Like if you got this thought, you go, I got to leave. And you walk out the door and you've got nothing. And you might not know anybody. You've been in for so many years and you may not know anybody. Within 2 blocks, where do you go? Or within 5 blocks, 10 blocks, you can get on a bus. Where are you going to go? Who are you going to talk to?
There's people who ended up on park benches because they had no one to go to.
Yeah.
Jeff Hawkins' story is similar to that.
Yeah.
They had nowhere to go.
Right.
I at least had a brother, but I had a hesitancy on that because he'd been gone. I hadn't seen him in 8 years, and he was declared a suppressive person. And here I was, oh my God, I'm going to go talk to a suppressive person. That was my hesitancy. And then finally I was like, I got no other solution.
Right. Yeah. And that's the way I see it for people who come out of the Sea Org. A lot of them. Some of them may have a little bit, enough money to, fly somewhere else where they may know somebody. And I know people have taken that chance and arrived, and fortunately people have taken them in, but not always. I think there's probably a lot of stories out there of people who, like Mark says, ended up on park benches, that you don't hear those stories because they just weren't able to get back on their feet properly. Some people get out young enough that they can get their lives together. I mean, Willie and I were both 60, so over 60. Yeah. Not so easy to start. We started off like college kids with nothing, basically. So, and now we're wealthy, retired. Not quite.
Yeah. Well, one avenue for help is the Aftermath Foundation, which I know a lot of our viewers know about.
Yeah.
That will help people leaving Scientology and the Sea organization get a start. And they can reach out to the Aftermath Foundation if they get out. And that's something that didn't exist when we were there.
Yeah, as long as they know that it's there and how to contact them. I think that's got to be a little difficult for some too. If they're inside, information in Scientology is so guarded that it's tough for people to learn, even as public. My wife and I were both on staff in the early days, but even as public, you're just trained to not look at certain information. You don't watch negative TV shows or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
we've got some questions for some of the people here for Phil, and from Dastardly Saboteur. How did the cult find out you were doing a billboard?
Well, we actually released the news that we were doing it because part of the reason we had to do that was to raise money for it. So it was a bit of a catch-22 that we had to put the information out about it so we could raise the money and get support. But Scientology was obviously following that news that we were doing that and ended up shutting us down. I wasn't that worried about getting shut down because I knew ultimately we would be able to get the billboard up, and we did.
Yeah. Okay. And the next question here is from Susanna Pimentel. Question: could you do an age progression? How long was this? Is law enforcement still searching? Well, we kind of covered that already, right? With you did have the missing person.
Yeah, that was just a one-day thing. That welfare check, missing person thing. The most of this took place, I guess, around 2016 in that area down there with the billboards and a lot of that stuff. 2017.
Yeah. And then we've got Donna Rose. Sorry, thank you for the super chat. Donna says, even though a call letter is simple, David Miscavige will never let you win, quote unquote. The more you do to reach out, the deeper they bury your loved one, which is kind of sad and true. You know,
Yeah.
He does not want anybody reaching out, and the real reason, I mean, if you think about it, they want to control that is because they're afraid that people like you or me or Janice, that we're going to tell them the truth. And by telling them the truth, they may leave, and they don't want them to leave. You know, they want to control that person.
You're 100% right there. They don't want anyone in there to have a conversation. When we first moved to Canada, it was kind of a strange thing happened. This was 4.5 years ago. I had gotten my first Canadian number in 30 some odd years, and within a week of being here, I got a phone call from St. Hill in the UK, Scientology organization there. And for some reason, my number, however Scientology got that number, I have no idea. They had my name wrong, but I got in a conversation with the guy. I thought, you know what? I'm just going to talk to the guy. And I recorded it. And it was really interesting. I mean, he wanted me to go on the purification rundown. And in the end, I talked to him about disconnection, and he ended up kind of hanging up. But my view is, like, some people will kind of not talk to people, but if they call me, I'll engage. I'll talk to them. Usually it doesn't go anywhere, but at least I'll make the attempt.
Well, I had a situation where my dad was in for years. He had to disconnect from my brother, sister, and I. And in 2012, I started speaking out more, and my brother actually spoke to a news station once. And so Marion Powell pulled in my dad because she knew him. She grew up with knowing him. She pulled him in and gave him the assignment of coming to handle my brother and I so that we would stop speaking out.
Yeah.
So he shows up in Vegas wanting to have a family meeting, and we haven't seen him in years. He's been paying all sorts of money for this and that and never getting any service because he was the father of 3 SPs. But he comes to handle us. We pointed out all the facts to him and how his money was being used to hire PIs to follow us, and that for them to try and ruin our lives. And here's all the facts on what's really going on inside. And we ended up in 2012 getting our father to actually leave Scientology and move to Las Vegas. And he lived down the road a couple of blocks from my sister for the next 15 years of his life or so. And he passed away at 93 years old, but he had all 3 of his kids with him.
That's awesome.
And he was happy through all those years with us.
Yep.
Yeah. The fact that you were able to have a conversation with him is huge. And it's more difficult now because they pretty much locked people down. They're not going to send some random person out to talk to somebody like that.
Right.
But you're lucky. And that, well done for handling that so well that you managed.
It backfired on them.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of, like, what your daughter is married to the head of ASI or whatever, Galaxy Printing or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't want. They're afraid that they'll pull them out. Unfortunately, you know what I mean. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Where it's just communication. They all need to communicate with their families. They create so much animosity over this disconnection, which is the most ridiculous policy any organization can have, because factually family is, there's nothing closer than family, but Scientology gets so in your head that they brainwash you to think that Scientology is more important than your family.
That's true. But from the Scientology viewpoint, that makes sense, though, because it's a tough position for them to be in. If they want to keep people under control, they don't want to have them contact their families, because exactly what happened with Janice and her father would happen if our kids came to visit us. I'd have that conversation with them, and maybe they'll stay with us. And Scientology is not going to take that chance on having them be in touch with us.
Yeah, but if they'd never disconnected him from us in the first place, it wouldn't have built up all
Right.
those years. We
Right.
would have just had a friendly, and we would have kept it, fair weather, good
Yeah.
roads and fair weather.
Right.
Just like you and Willie
Exactly
would
right.
never have done that billboard if those kids had stayed in touch with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Okay. Anything else, Phil, you wanted to say about this before I know you've got to go?
No,
We're
I
going to move on
appreciate
to
you
our
guys
next
doing
section.
this. I really do appreciate you guys doing this and bringing all this to light. And thanks so much for having me on. I do appreciate
Yeah, it's an important subject. I mean, I know
Yeah.
our viewers are really interested in it, and there's nothing better than see somebody reunite either with an ex-staff member or an ex-Sea Org member or a family member. It's great. I mean, we have friends that have come out, and when you reconnect with them, it's like, hey, we're glad to see you, and we're here to help you. So, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like politics. You might have different viewpoints than your friends, but you're still friends and family.
Yes. 100%.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, Phil.
All right,
Well, we appreciate you being here.
Awesome.
Thank you, Phil.
All right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks
Thanks
Janet.
very much.
And
We're
love
going to
to
move
Willie.
on.
All right.
All right. Well, bye-bye, Phil.
now.
We appreciate
Okay.
it. Bye. That was Phil Jones for you viewers, everybody. We really appreciate him being here and telling his story, because it's a sad story and it goes on every day with people connected to Scientology, and it's very sad. We're going to move on now and cover the next subject, okay, which has to do with David Miscavige and the lies that Scientology is telling again. Who's supposed to be the boss of Scientology, okay? And
Not David Miscavige.
yeah, and Mike Rinder wrote a blog post earlier this week about this because I think Scientology updated their website. Is that right, Janis?
I believe that's what happened.
Yeah, and they updated their website with information about David Miscavige and about how he is the anointed one and he's the person that's in charge and all that. Well, Mike put in his 2 cents on his blog, and then Aaron did a video on it as well and covered that. But we wanted to put our 2 cents in because we were around during that time. We were around when L. Ron Hubbard was alive, and we were around when David Miscavige took control, and we want to, start telling the story. Okay. So this is David Miscavige today. This is what he looks like. And he's taken control of Scientology years ago, but that's not necessarily what was supposed to happen. Okay. This is from the Scientology website that they updated. It says, barely a year after entering the Sea Organization, the religious order of Scientology, at the age of 16, he was among a handful of people selected to work directly with L. Ron Hubbard. Recognizing the 17-year-old's abilities, Mr. Hubbard appointed David Miscavige director of photography for the original Scientology training films. And here's a photograph of L. Ron Hubbard with the cine shoot crew at the time. And if you look right in the center in the white outfit, that's David Miscavige, the camera. Okay. And this is a posed photograph, but this is when they were trying to do cinema movies at the location in La Quinta, right, Janis?
Yeah, yes, it is. And and all those movies that they did all had to be scrapped because they were so bad.
They were terrible. Okay. And Janis, your sister was the cameraman first, right? She was the one handling the camera, right?
Yes, she was the cameraman. And what had actually happened is Hubbard was in Sparks, Nevada, and he was going to come back and set up Cine and do some training films. So he wrote to the messengers, and we were all to study the 5 C's and all learn different parts of making a film.
5 C's is the 5 C's of cinematography. Sorry, go ahead, Janis.
And so when he comes back in January of 1978, it's then proposed, well, all of SU people can contribute. And
SU is special unit.
I'm sorry. Anyway, so Miscavige's job was video camera. My sister was on the camera and Miscavige was on the video camera.
Right.
So go
And,
on, Mark, with the story.
oh no, that's okay. So I was just going to say, so he was on there, right? And Hubbard shot films as best he could, and the films were terrible. They were so bad that when Hubbard later passed away or whatever, he had them all reshot by professional director Mitch Brisker, who we've interviewed. And, they were poor quality, the whole thing. Well, Miscavige was the cameraman on those things, and so it wasn't any great thing that he was 17 years old and made the cameraman for L. Ron Hubbard's movies. But Janis, why don't you go ahead and fill in people, what was Miscavige, at 16 and 17, how close was he really to Hubbard at La Quinta?
Yeah. Well, it must have been about January of 1977. I was in Clearwater running the Commodore's Messenger org there, and Hubbard sent me a telex asking me to send him some messenger trainees. So I sent Miscavige as one of them. I sent Shelley around that same time. And anyway, when I then arrived in April of 77, Miscavige had been there a few months, and he didn't stand watches with LRH. He was the traffic messenger. He was 2 offices away from LRH's office, where any dispatches going to LRH went through him to side check and make sure they were complete. He basically was doing what Ken Urquhart used to do on the ship, of checking traffic before it went in. And that's what he did. He didn't even stand watch where he ran messages or he went out around the base with Hubbard. He was in that little office several hours a day checking traffic. And he was also, the messengers had a vegetable garden just outside the walls of Rifle where Hubbard lived. And Miscavige was in charge of our vegetable garden.
That's experience for being the leader of Scientology. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I remember that so clearly because when I showed up in April, he was so proud showing me the garden and radishes. The radishes had grown, and he's giving me a radish, which was, but I remember that so clearly, him in the garden. And then shortly after that was when the FBI raided, so LRH took off. So it was only just a few months of 1977 where he was the traffic messenger. And then Hubbard came back in January of 78. And so there was that whole year there of mostly working as on the camera or the video. And then when Hubbard got sick, then Miscavige was on doing messenger watches as a third messenger, but he was never a senior messenger or even the second messenger of the watch. He was in training. And then we moved. So that was 1 year of 78. Mm-hmm. Then at the end of 78, we ended up having to quickly move to Gillham Hot Springs because some reporter shows up at La Quinta, and so Hubbard takes off. Then, so now in 79, LRH is living at an apartment building we called X, and the messengers would go out there for 1 week at a time, for 1 week, maybe 2 weeks off and back, And Miscavige did a few of those watches, but then Watchdog Committee was set up, and Miscavige was also running missions, so he was always having an excuse that he couldn't go to X for a week. And so in actual and then early 80, Hubbard is gone, and Miscavige was in LA at that time when Hubbard left. So there's really only that year of 1978 where Miscavige worked directly with Hubbard.
Now, when would have been the last time that he probably saw Hubbard physically?
He probably would have seen him, I believe it was like January of 80 when all of CMO Int moved to LA, because I was on leave and I came back from leave from Australia in early January, and all the messengers on Watchdog Committee and management stuff were in PAC in Los Angeles, and Miscavige was there. Hubbard was still up in Hemet at X, and Annie and Pat were with him, and Jay Okamoto, Gary Miyahara, Doug Holmes. There's several messengers still up there with him. And Shelley was still up there, and my sister-in-law Doreen was still up there. So, but Miscavige was not there. He was in Los Angeles. So he would have seen him toward probably the end of 79. So as I'm saying, there was not a heavy time period where you take my sister, me, and Annie, and even Claire Popham. We started in 1968, and we were there with Hubbard, all the way through. Or, when he would go to places, we might not see him for a few months, but then we would follow up afterwards and be there. So,
well, when Hubbard took off, like to Sparks and places like that, he would take a messenger with him. Was it, generally speaking, a more senior messenger than Miscavige?
Definitely. Miscavige was just a messenger in training. He would never have gone or been picked on anything like this. When he went to Sparks, he took Dee Dee and Claire. They happened to have been on watch at the time that he was
Dee Dee
leaving.
Riesdorf and Gail Irwin. Gail Riesdorf, too. No.
Claire.
Claire. Sorry.
Not Gail. Dee Dee Riesdorf.
Sorry, Claire.
And Claire
Yeah.
Popham Rousseau.
Right. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
They went with LRH. And then Pat Broker was there starting to become a messenger, and they took him, so they had a male with them. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just two young girls with Hubbard. So that's when he went to Sparks. So then it was when Kimmer and Mike Douglas blew in early 80. At that point, it was discussed, okay, if LRH has to leave again, who is going with him? And I know I was sitting there going, don't pick me, I want a life. Because whoever is going to go, that you're not going to be around people anymore. So it was decided, since Pat and Annie were married, they would be the two that would go with him. So when that time did come, Pat and Annie went. They weren't picked for any other reason except they were married and they were messengers.
Right. And at the time, they didn't know how long they'd be gone. They just went with Hubbard. Right.
Right. Exactly.
And it turns out they were with him all the way through until the end of his life in 1986. And so they were with him for an additional 6 years. 6
years, pretty much on their own with him, and then having
every day.
Every day, just the four of them.
Yeah. All right. So let me go on to the next thing. This is also from the Scientology updated website. Soon after, at Mr. Hubbard's request, Mr. Miscavige served as action chief, the senior executive supervising projects involving Scientology, churches around the world. By age 18, David Miscavige had become the individual L. Ron Hubbard called upon to carry out his most important assignments. Okay, so this is what Miscavige looked like at that time, okay, in 1980. And he was called upon to handle his most important projects, okay? And, he actually, as the action chief, he had to go in and when the Guardian's office, when that needed to be straightened out or whatever, right, Janis? He ran the missions that actually went in there and investigated and handled the Guardian's office. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
But then what happened? Out of the Guardian's office became the Office of Special Affairs. So they just basically changed their names. They got rid of the criminals that were involved in infiltrating the U.S. government, but they kept a ton of old Guardian's office people, and they set them up as the Office of Special Affairs. They just renamed it and continued doing the same things that they were doing as the Guardian's office. So, so he may have gone in there to straighten out the house, but guess what? They're still doing dirty tricks and dirty stuff to this very day. So I can't really say that was a huge success.
Right.
Anyway, other people carrying out his most important assignments, Janis. There must have been a lot of other people that were doing things for him.
Well, there were, and you had to you had to pick good missionaries to do these projects. Like he wasn't requested by Hubbard that he be the action chief. No, that was an internal decision because he was the mission ops, and we worked out an organization board. So the logical person to put on as the head of the division was him.
Right.
You know, it was out of logic rather than Hubbard requested it. No, he did not.
Right.
And then a mission ops, yeah, he would sit there and write up the orders and steps for missionaries to follow. But you also needed missionaries who were good and would do what they're supposed to do. And that's where people were selected, like Laurel Watson was selected, and she was to do what Hubbard requested be done, which was sort out all the corporations of Scientology. And she and Larry Brennan and a bunch of different people all did projects to sort that out. That wasn't Miscavige doing it, but he had to direct them, and they did it all, the footwork, and did everything. They worked the whole thing out.
And other missionaries that did similar things were Captain Bill Robertson and Bill Franks and Norman Starkey. They were the ones, these are veteran Sea Org members who had been around Hubbard and been on the Apollo for years. And those were the people that actually went into the Guardian's office and cleaned house and took over and took care of things. Miscavige may have been handling the telexes and telling them, oh, here's what you need to do on your orders and that type of thing. But these were the people on the ground that were actually getting the job done.
Right.
Okay, the next thing, next it says, no executive in the church's history ever interacted more with L. Ron Hubbard than Mr. Miscavige. They were in constant communication. No executive in Scientology history ever interacted more with L. Ron Hubbard than Mr. Miscavige. Well, I'd like to contrary, that's a contrary fact, because I'm going to show you some people that actually did interact with L. Ron Hubbard more than David Miscavige. Okay, that's Miscavige at that time. Go ahead.
And Miscavige at this time only had about a year of working directly as a junior messenger or an in-training messenger.
Right. Okay, so here's one right now. Here's one. This is Doreen Smith Gillham, okay? And she was a messenger on the ship with L. Ron Hubbard for many years, and she became very close to Hubbard. We have lots of photographs of her on photo shoots, and she'd be right there with him at the camera and that type of thing. And she spent, just like you did, Janis, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week on watch. She was a senior messenger. Is that correct?
Yeah, she came to the ship in 1970 and became a messenger, a junior messenger, and she was there. She left in 1981, but still, all those years is still more than Miscavige.
Absolutely. Then we come to the next one. Oh, who's this? Janice Gillham Grady. Janice Gillham Grady. Oh my God. I see her on the left there walking behind L. Ron Hubbard as a 12 or 13-year-old, okay, with her flood pants. Okay. And then in the center there's Janice with, on the right, if you're facing the picture, oh, that's Annie Tidman, Annie Broker, Annie Rush. And on the left is Claire Popham. Okay. And there's on the right is Janice with L. Ron Hubbard on a photo shoot. Okay. And Janice was a messenger from the age of 13 years old.
No,
and she spent
12.
So she spent 6 hours a day, 7 days a week with Hubbard for many years. Okay, I can imagine that Miscavige spent probably 1/100th the amount of time that Janice spent with L. Ron Hubbard. Would you agree, Miss Janice Grady?
Yes, Mark, correct.
Okay. And then we have the one who probably spent more time with L. Ron Hubbard than anybody else really on the planet, and that's
Not
Annie
probably, but did.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe family members, but yeah, no, you're right. That's Annie Tidman, Rush broker. And here's Annie. L. Ron Hubbard has his hand on her shoulder. That's Annie standing behind L. Ron Hubbard at a wedding on the Apollo when she was a young girl. Okay. And then here she is as Annie Rush. Who's that walking her down the stairs to give her away to marry Charlie Rush? Why, that's L. Ron Hubbard himself. And then on the photograph on the right, it's L. Ron Hubbard and Mary Sue Hubbard, and they're toasting Annie, who's sitting down there on the right. Okay. You can't get much closer than that. Okay. And I missed a picture there. Anyway, that is who was with him more than anybody else, okay, was Annie Broker, who also was with him all the way through until the day that he died in his Bluebird in January 1986. So there's no way that Miscavige was the person who was closest to L. Ron Hubbard. Am I right, Janis?
That is correct, Mark. And I'd also like to point out, though Annie has passed away, so of the people living, the people who are still closest and worked with Hubbard the most, still living would be myself, my sister Terry, and Claire Popham Lowing. Yeah.
Okay, that's right. All right. And then there was that comment about Miscavige staying in constant communication with L. Ron Hubbard, even after he left in 1980 and went on the run with Pat and Annie. Oh, he was in constant communication with L. Ron Hubbard. Well, let me show you something here. Okay. Let me show this here. This is a map, okay, of Southern California. And you can notice on the right-hand side, there's a little thing, Int Base. That's the base in Gillham Hot Springs, right? You've got the CST headquarters there, but that didn't exist at the time. Big Blue is in Los Angeles, and that's where Los Angeles is. And then way up on the left is Creston, California. And that's where the hidden ranch was, where L. Ron Hubbard was bought for L. Ron Hubbard by Pat and Annie Broker. And that's where he actually lived until the day that he died, okay? So the way that communications would get to L. Ron Hubbard while he was gone from 1980 to 1986 was there would be message dispatch runs, courier runs is actually more accurate, okay? And basically the couriers would meet somewhere between the international base and Creston, somewhere in California, San Bernardino, Riverside, all different places, because it was not known where L. Ron Hubbard was, and the authorities, they were hiding. They didn't want to know where he was. So lots of security was put in terms of not being traced or anything like that. So who were the couriers? Pat Broker would actually come down from wherever Hubbard was and bring whatever dictaphone tapes or anything like that Hubbard would dictate advices or orders and bring them, and then he would meet up with David Miscavige. It was initially Dee. It was initially somebody else, right, Janis?
Yeah, initially Dee Dee used to have to go as the CO, and then later Gail. But Pat was lonely. He only had Sarge, Annie, and LRH around. He was lonely. He wanted to talk. So Dee Dee wanted to work, and so did Gail. And they used to take Dave with them just to have a male escort with them. And then finally, it was like, hey, Dave, can you go do the run? I've got to work on the international stats or this program and that program. So Dave was more dispensable and was sent to go and do the courier runs and, one pass over the different boxes to each other. But Pat wanted to sit and talk. And that's where it could take hours because Pat would just talk and talk and talk, having a lack of people to talk to.
And it could be at all hours of the day or night. Literally, a phone call would come in from Pat from a payphone, and then they would have a prearranged location where they would meet up, or he would tell them, and they would meet up at like a truck stop somewhere in California. Right. And Miscavige would jump into a black van that we had. It was a black van, and he literally would just drive off. It could be at any time of the day or night, and he'd just literally leave, and he'd have to go through all the circuitous route so he wasn't followed, and then meet up with Pat somewhere. And that you could understand why a woman would not want to do that, because, who knows how safe it was, and like you said, Janis, they would meet up and they'd talk and they'd exchange boxes. Yeah.
Well, and you'd have to, when you were ready to meet, you'd have to go to a payphone and call a number and then and it's like calling a pager, and then Pat would call that phone booth back, and you then discuss where to meet, and then you go and meet. So it was a very complicated and long drawn out thing.
Yeah, and for those young people that are watching, yeah, payphone is where you actually put quarters in, and we used to have those because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have pagers in those days. You know what I mean? It was just like you had to, use a payphone to get anywhere, so it was very difficult to get around.
Yeah, no cell phone to the hip.
Okay, so that was the only communication line to L. Ron Hubbard, was that line, and they would pass cash. They'd pass hundreds of thousands of dollars if that's what L. Ron Hubbard needed to buy his ranch or to do whatever. There would be bankers' boxes full of cash, and that's how they bought things. Hubbard did not have credit cards or anything like that. They were living under assumed names in hiding, and so things were paid for with cash. And so Miscavige would do those transfers in the boxes in the middle of the night to broker, and that's how anything got to Hubbard in those days. And this went on from 1980 until the day he died in 1986. Right. And so that was the communication line. Now, Janis, why don't you explain to people what happened on that communication line from management to L. Ron Hubbard when he had questions or he wanted to know about something? What would happen?
Well, he would letters would come down either typed by him and later dictated by him and typed by Susie Bennick in the communications office, or Annie would take orders from him and type those up. And they would come down to us. DM would get them from Pat, bring them to us, would, hand them out. Everyone would get their dispatches or their orders. Now, replies would be needed. And then I heard from Sarge, who also sometimes did courier runs. Sarge had said that if Pat and DM did not like the report that was going up to Hubbard, they would sit in the black van and redo the report. So though someone else's name is attached to that report, they didn't do it. It was changed. And they don't know what it was changed to, but they'd sometimes get these blasting answers, as if, but they're like, wait a minute, I said that in my report, but they're being blasted because it wasn't in their report. So no one knew how Pat and Dave changed things. And let's take the mission holders, for example. The orders coming down from Hubbard for the finance police and for the taking control of all those missions back in 82, I guess it was.
Yeah, 81, 82, yeah.
Yeah, that was all based off of reports from David Miscavige being the savior. And yes, they were trying to mutiny, but we've got it under control.
And they're ripping you off. They're ripping you off.
Exactly. And Hubbard knew for years, he got all mission holders. Yeah, they're out ethics, but you just pull them in and clean them up and send them back out. They're so important to the feeders of Scientology. But based on the lies being sent to Hubbard, it stirred him up to where these amazing responses were coming down that I'm like, what the hell was sent to him? Because it was so out of valence for how Hubbard would normally respond to what the real situation was. And it became so destructive, it destroyed that mission network. And that was all based off David Miscavige's lies to Hubbard, from him sitting there writing the report or changing reports in the van.
And that even goes to international management as well. The statistics were actually expanding in the late 70s, early 80s. So that, for the first time, they were really taking off, and they were building more organizations all over the world. And Miscavige, reports would be sent up to Hubbard, okay? And everything went through Miscavige. I mean, he literally had if you wrote a report that was going to Hubbard, he would actually review it. And if he didn't like it, he'd kick it back to you and make you change it or paint the picture the way that he wanted to see it. Okay. So he was a filter on all this stuff. And what happened? A lot of the senior executives of international management, people like the executive director international, the commanding officer of the Flag Bureau, Kerry Gleason, Bill Franks, these people were all taken off. They were all removed, and eventually they were all declared suppressive people and kicked out of Scientology. And at the time, the executives that were over international management, they were so frustrated with what the orders that were coming in, because they were coming out of left field in terms of what they were doing. They were convinced that somebody was feeding L. Ron Hubbard false information. And they actually thought about hiring their own private investigators to locate L. Ron Hubbard and go directly to him themselves. Okay. And when this was found out about by Miscavige, it was reported up to Hubbard, and that they were going to try and out L. Ron Hubbard's location. And they were shit canned so fast. They were put under guard. They were kept under guard at the gold base until they were gotten rid of. And this also happened to David Mayo as well, who was a senior CS international, who actually saved L. Ron Hubbard's life in 1978, 79.
78.
When he was called to La Quinta to actually audit L. Ron Hubbard when he was on death's door. Okay. And same thing, false reports sent up by Miscavige to L. Ron Hubbard with Pat Broker. David Miscavige is all of a sudden the biggest suppressive person there is and has to be removed. Okay. And during this time period as well, Miscavige knew what was coming down. I mean, he actually, this is not something I'm making up. This is in Jesse Prince's book. This is in other people's books and that. Hubbard actually didn't trust Miscavige at a certain point and ordered Mayo to sec check Miscavige, to put him on the cans and find out what is it he's got going on. Okay. And that information was sent up to Pat Broker, and it never made it to Hubbard's, what I've been told. So, go ahead.
Let me interject here. The reason it got to Pat Broker was because it was in the same box of, Jesse Prince sec-checked David Miscavige, and David Mayo sec-checked Pat Broker, because Hubbard had ordered both of them to be sec-checked to find out what was going on. And the report...
That's because the all clear wasn't happening. He was not happy with the progress on the all clear, which was getting rid of all the lawsuits. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. And he had assigned Pat that responsibility, and Miscavige was the mission ops who was supposed to get the all clear and was dealing with the attorneys. But the sec checks that were done on both Pat and David were in the courier boxes that David was taking to Pat to then take up to LRH. And according to Saj, who is no longer with us, those sec checks were taken out of the box and never got to LRH, because apparently David and Pat didn't want it known that, according to David Mayo and Jesse Prince, they were whoring around in Las Vegas and spending Scientology money gambling.
Yep. Anyway, so this is how the communication line happened, and a lot of destruction happened because of it. And in a way, it actually laid the groundwork for David Miscavige to take over, because all of a sudden, no mission network, okay, no international managers anymore. All right. And there was other things that he did as well. They had the finance police go in and strip the missions and organizations of money, and they would send it to Hubbard, his portion of it. And that, of course, made him happy that he was getting this money. He didn't know where it was coming from, but all sorts of things were going on like that. And this was all under Miscavige and what he was doing at that time. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next thing here. Okay. This is also from the Scientology website. In 1982, Hubbard requested a corporate reorganization of the church designed to ensure the church and the religion could move on into perpetuity, always remaining true to its source materials, the term for L. Ron Hubbard's philosophy, policies, and fundamental theology of religion. Thus, Mr. Hubbard established the Religious Technology Center to hold the Scientology and Dynex trademarks and to preserve, maintain, and protect the Scientology religion. He appointed Mr. Miscavige a trustee of that church organization? Okay, well, first of all, the Religious Technology Center was not holding the trademarks of Scientology Dynamics. That was the Church of Spiritual Technology that actually was the owner and the holder of those trademarks. The Religious Technology Center was licensed to police and maintain the integrity of those trademarks. They didn't hold them. They were held by Church of Spiritual Technology. And Miscavige, he was not part of Religious Technology Center at the time. He was the chairman of the board of Author Services, the for-profit organization that handled L. Ron Hubbard's literary works, his books, his films, and making money for him. Okay. And he was not in charge of the Religious Technology Center. Who was? Annie Broker was the first inspector general for the Religious Technology Center, and she was with L. Ron Hubbard. Okay. She was the person who was in charge of Religious Technology Center at that time. And then Janis found out that from a source that we don't want to name, that attorneys felt that she was too close to Hubbard and that they needed an arm's length. So they established a deputy inspector general that was located at the base. It was first a guy named Steve Marlowe, and then later it was Vicky Asnaran. Okay. But Annie was always the person who was over the Religious Technology Center, even if she didn't have the title. It was not David Miscavige at that time.
Right. Right,
Okay.
Mark.
This is also from the Scientology website. Mr. Hubbard also appointed David Miscavige as chairman of the organization, charged with overseeing and handling his personal affairs for the remainder of his life. That organization was called Author Services Incorporated, and that's what David Miscavige looked like at that time when he was the chairman of the board of Author Services. He was not the executive director. There were other senior executives that were in there that were working in there at that time. Okay, well, let's take a look at some of the things that David Miscavige oversaw at Author Services. Okay, under Miscavige, over $30 million of L. Ron Hubbard's money was lost on bad oil investments. Hubbard never knew. To cover it up, a program was begun to sell leather Hubbard books and science fiction artwork. Okay, so what happened was that they took an investment. This is a high school dropout. Okay, this is no financial advisor, nobody who has a degree in business or finance. This was a high school dropout, took L. Ron Hubbard's money, invested it in some oil wells. Okay, and they went bust. They didn't go through, and they lost that money. Now you can imagine one thing that Hubbard loved was money. All right. And if he had found out that they had lost $30 million of his money, Miscavige would have been no more. He would not have been on that line anymore. He would not have been the anointed one. Okay. And this is well known by the executives at the time at Author Services. And the only way that they figured out how they could try and cover it up was they began selling autographed books by L. Ron Hubbard, leather edition Hubbard books, science fiction framed artwork, and a lot of old-time Scientologists and Sea Org members, they know all about this, okay, because they would be read, to buy this stuff, right? And I noticed when I went to Author Services website today, I couldn't find any of this stuff for sale on their website anymore, so they must not do that anymore, okay? Also,
no, well, they don't have to cover up any losses like that.
That's right. And then also, Miscavige, he never got the all clear of the lawsuits and the IRS investigations for L. Ron Hubbard before he died. His number one priority when he was action chief, and then when he was also the chairman of the board of Author Services, was to get all the lawsuits handled and get the IRS investigation handled so that Hubbard could come out and do what he wanted to do his movies and things like that. Okay. That never happened. As a matter of fact, they lost a lawsuit up in Portland, Oregon, and then they had to go to great lengths to get it thrown out. The judgment was over $30 million against Scientology. They eventually got it sorted out and thrown out of court, but it took a lot of resources and manpower to do that. All right. The IRS, their criminal investigation division, was investigating Hubbard as well as David Miscavige and Author Services. Why? Because the IRS correctly believed that Scientology was set up to benefit financially L. Ron Hubbard, and that the money was flowing to L. Ron Hubbard. And that was the case. All right. And it got to the point where Marty Rathbun has said this in his book, and Mike Rinder and all that it was believed that the only way that they were going to get out of the IRS situation was if L. Ron Hubbard died. And what happens in 1986? L. Ron Hubbard dies, January 1986. And who was there with him? Let's take a look at the people that were with L. Ron Hubbard. Was David Miscavige called up to be with L. Ron Hubbard if he was the anointed one to take over Scientology? No. Pat Broker and Annie Broker, of course, were up there with Sarge, taking care of the ranch and taking care of L. Ron Hubbard. In the middle there is Dr. Gene Dank. He's no longer alive. He died in 2004. And he had been taken up to that location several times to treat Hubbard because he had had several strokes and he had other medical conditions. And Gene Dank was a Scientology doctor. He was a Scientologist, and he was brought up there. And Janis, you said that you don't even think he was there when Hubbard died. He came afterwards. Is that right?
Who, Dink?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a hit or miss because his wife had been complaining not seeing him. So he actually was up in Reno with his wife. And then they heard that Hubbard was dying. So they quickly got him back down to Creston.
Yeah. And then in the lower right is a gentleman by the name of Ray Midoff. He was the senior CS International at the time, senior case supervisor. And he actually was called to the ranch up in Creston, California, several days before Hubbard died. And he was brought up there so that he could process, audit L. Ron Hubbard on his deathbed and take care of him. Okay. So those are the people that were up there when Hubbard died. Miscavige was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't seen Hubbard since 1980. So this was supposedly the person that was going to take over Scientology?
Yeah, he'd not even gone to Creston.
Right. He didn't even know where Creston was. He didn't
Right.
find out until Hubbard died, and that's when they went rushing up there. He didn't know where he was. So how did David Miscavige actually take over after that point? That's going to be a part 2 that's going to be coming up very soon. I hate to leave you with a mystery sandwich or a cliffhanger, but this video has gone on long enough, and we will cover that in our next video. We'll go over the whole takeover because there was a coup. He took out the people that were responsible, that actually were going to run Scientology, and we'll go into those details in a future video.
I would like to say, Mark, that's cruel, but it has to happen.
I hope you all enjoyed it. We're going to answer any questions, briefly. But before we do that, we're going to give away a book, Janis, right? So
Yeah.
if you would like to win one of Janis's books, I know we're running a little long here, but we're going to go ahead and do it here. Get in the chat, say book me or whatever, and Janis will autograph the book to you. And if you win the book, she'll go ahead and we'll get your information, your mailing information, and you guys can win a copy of Janis's book. I don't see anybody in the chat right now. Come on, people. If you're in there, want to get it or win a book, come on, get in that chat. I know there's a little bit of a delay. Janis, how can they, whoever wins the book, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, they email me at Janis Gillham Grady. That's JANIS GILLHAMGRADY @gmail.com. Just email me, let me know you were the winner, and give me your address. And remember, if you're outside the US, you can play if you want, but you'll have to pay the $30 or whatever shipping.
Okay, great. All right, so everybody get in the comments here in the chat. Book me, book me, book me. All right. I'm going to do a countdown from 5, all right? And then I'm going to just randomly pick someone, okay? And I see a lot of people are in here right now. They want to win the book. So go ahead, Janis. Why don't you count down, Janis, and I'll click on the when you get after 1.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hit it.
Laura Plays, book. Lori
Okay.
Plays. Sorry about that. Congratulations, Lori Plays. You win an autographed copy of Janis's book. And like I said before, thank you so much for playing, everybody. What you need to do, Lori Plays, is email Janis at janisgilhamgrady@gmail.com, your contact information and what you would like written in the book, and we'll get that sent off to you. Okay? So congratulations to Lori Plays. All right. So Janice, I'm going to go in and start answering the question or putting the questions up. If you would go in and, you know what to do, star the questions
I'm trying
and
to
all
do
that.
it right now.
Yeah, and we're already an hour and 34 minutes in here, but we'll take questions here for the next 10 or 15 minutes. We're going to try and answer all your questions. If you want to super chat us or super sticker us, please do. We would appreciate that. And we're starting off with a super sticker right away. Jefferson Hawkins, Portland, Oregon, in the house. Thanks very much, Jeff. Jeff's an old friend, and he's been around for a long time. And he's one of the people, I think, when I read his book, that he ended up sleeping had no place to go in Santa Barbara after he left the Sea Organization. So anyway, thanks very much, Jeff. We got a new member to our channel. Denver Stevo became a YouTube member to our channel. Thanks very much, Denver Stevo. And just a reminder for anybody who wants to join our channel, just hit that join button on our page, our YouTube page, or on any one of our videos. And we would really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 30 members here by in the next 2-3 weeks. So anyway, thanks very much, Denver Stevo. We appreciate that. And Goldie says, Denver. How are you doing today, sugar? Okay, well, there you go. Thanks very much, Goldie. We've got Timothy MC. Question: Shelley must know that her midget husband wasn't supposed to be LRH's successor. Why wouldn't she coop his ass? I don't understand what that means, but anyway, yeah, she knows that. She was
she knows that, but Shelley herself was of the same messenger status as her husband. She herself was not a senior messenger.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a lot of jealousy too, right, Janice, between towards the senior messengers,
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I know when they got power, Miscavige and Shelley, when they got power, they didn't like the senior messengers around. They didn't, whatever.
No, they got rid of us.
That's exactly right. They got rid of anybody who actually had a connection to L. Ron Hubbard, which is what Miscavige has done over the years. Okay, thank you, Timothy. Next question, Martin Ottman. Question for Janice. A flag order from 1973 defines the activities and duties of the Sea Org Officer Council. Did it actually meet regularly and enforce SO etiquette on the ship? Were you a member?
No, I was not a member. But no. There was a Sea Org Officer Council where they would meet and propose promotions, because otherwise it was always left up to Hubbard to think of promoting people. So a council was set up to do that. And so they would recommend different people for it. But enforce SO etiquette, people pretty much enforce that themselves. If you were an officer and someone didn't call you sir, they'd say, you should be calling me sir. There's people who are status hungry who would do that type of thing.
Okay, Martin, thanks very much for that question. We've got a super chat from Beachcomber. Thank you very much. Love my bag. Janice, you have one of your bags to show? I have my yarn. Says, I have my yarn in it. Here's some pennies towards the shipping. There you go. That's a canvas bag. If you become a peeling professional as a member, you get one of those bags for free. Okay. And we will send you that bag for free in the United States. So anyway, thanks very much, Beachcomber. We appreciate your support. Okay. Next question here is Moon Edge Daydream. Question: what happened to the Creston Ranch? Is it still owned by Scientology? The answer is yes, it is still owned by Scientology, and they got it fully renovated because it was not renovated fully when Hubbard was alive. And they have it, and they're keeping it, maintaining it. It's got those same symbols as the CST, the big circles that look like cool things up there. And we're going to do a show, right, Janice? Hopefully with somebody from there.
But that's why Hubbard died in the Bluebird motorhome and not the house, because the house still had to be renovated.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, we've got aerial photos and all that. And we actually have someone who was there after L. Ron Hubbard died to take care of that place. And we're hoping to schedule an interview with that person shortly. And anyway, so thanks very much for that question. And we will go up here to the next one. Sorry about that. I have that one already. Okay. This is from Maria Demazzi. Question: I hear you use many Greek words. LRH used them? Did he use them? Because they have the same meaning in Greek, not like some other words that you're using, which mean ID, I don't know. I am so sorry what that church does. Janis, the Greek words that Hubbard used and all that?
I don't know.
Well, you use Apollo and you use, the names of the
Oh,
ships.
well,
Those are
we were in Corfu.
Yeah.
And the idea was we were going to become a part of the Greek community. We were going to have an advanced organization there, and it was going to be a safe port for us. And so when he renamed the ships, it was the Apollo, the Athena, and the Diana.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's why, because it was a PR action.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me too that Hubbard, he coined words all the time, and he probably could have coined something that sounded like a Greek word or was a Greek word to mean something in Scientology. I mean, he took things from everywhere. Thank you very much, Maria, for that question. Next question, Martin Ottman, question for Janis. What do you know about Ingo Swann? Did he ever do services on the ship? What did Hubbard say about Swann's remote viewing research with the Stanford University?
What I know about Ingo was all from my mother and other people. Ingo never came to the ship. I have been told Ingo was in love with my mother and wanted to marry her. But so she was very good friends with him, and he talked about the remote viewing, and my mother talked about his remote viewing, but that's pretty much it. I don't know much else. I know I have a cassette somewhere where my mother talks about Ingo a little bit. Maybe I'll pull that out one day and re-listen to it.
Okay. He used to be featured in the Advance magazine with OT phenomena and all, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
stories and stuff like that.
I have his book. When my dad passed, I found it in his collection.
Okay. All right, Martin, thanks very much. Next question is from Betsy Crutcher. Question, when DM took over, did you ever think back then, what the hell? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
We actually thought at the time, I did, I don't know about you, Janis, but we actually thought that finally Pat and Annie were going to be able to come back to the gold base and be, run things and all that. You know what I mean? It was like they weren't going to be in secret and hiding, but that didn't happen. They stayed up there at the ranch.
Yeah, and that was their big mistake. They did not come down and become a part of the group. They instead started trying to pull key executives up to come and work with them as ranch hands when they were trained on international management and such. And that kind of created a bit of a conflict in itself. And then we had the big thing where Vicky and Annie were implementing everyone to be fully hatted. You were no longer considered fully hatted and qualified for bonuses unless you had had the false purpose rundown.
We're going to cover that in our next part.
Yeah, we'll cover that in the next part. So, all right, I'll leave it there. I'll leave you hanging.
Yeah. But anyway, we did think, what the hell, absolutely. Thanks, Betsy. I appreciate that. Next question, Lydia von Stretchclaw. Question, do you think little Davy actually believes these lies after all this time? Yeah, I think he believes what he believes. I don't know that he believes in Scientology. I doubt that he gets the services or anything like that. But, I think he knows that he's running something that, is generating great wealth for him and, great power. And it's his position. It's his ego, What do you think, Janis?
Yeah, I think he doesn't even believe in anything that he's doing. It's all for the money now and his ego. It's no longer about what it was originally, because I even heard they got rid of the green vols, the policies, the volumes of policy letters by Hubbard, and apparently only maybe a couple of offices will have the red vols of the bulletins of the technology. So for him to not allow people to have that, which was always a stable datum for staff, he mustn't believe it in himself, because he's not letting the people who do believe in it to have access to it.
Yep. Okay, thanks very much for that question. The next question is from Michael Feldman. Question: how could a little punk like DM dominate veterans like Bill Franks, Starkey, and others? You want to tackle that first, Janice?
Yeah, he had bigger bodyguards around him, or enforcers. He had finance police with him. So he rounded these other people up on a 1-by-1 basis. It's like 6 people moving in on one person. Yeah. And then, well, you were on the ComEv, weren't you, for Bill Franks? Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah. Kerry Gleason. Yeah, no, he always made sure he had strength in numbers, you know. He would call like a Bill Franks up to the secret gold base. And then when he was up there, basically he would have security, you know, put him under house arrest. Then there was no way out. He had no way to communicate. And basically that was how he did that with Bill Franks. As far as Norman and, you know, people like that, well, they worked for and with Miscavige for a long time, and Miscavige did have a lot of power, and he ran the place or people by fear. Okay, like you feared what he could do to you because there were other people that would back him. Like, for instance, he could send you to the Rehabilitation Project Force for no reason whatsoever, and people would execute those orders and take them on. So, you know, you had a bit of fear about it because the whole organization would be backing him up.
He was always one for a good fight. I mean, he would not back down. You could fight him no matter, and he just would not back down.
And he controlled the communication line to L. Ron Hubbard, and everybody knew that. So you knew that if he didn't like what you were doing, he could easily, you know, report you to Hubbard, and you know, basically you were in trouble. You know,
you couldn't even report to Hubbard yourself because he'd intercept it.
Yeah, there was no way to get any information to Hubbard. Okay. Next, Betsy Crusher question: was DM even an executive while Ellerich was alive? Yes, he was. Yeah, he had held executive positions in the Commodore's Messenger Org, basically as the action chief. He never had been a commanding officer of anything. All right, next question is Nerman Odkin. Question: how much money did Hubbard extract got paid by 2 p.m. Thursday, and did they file with Social Security as income? How much did Hubbard get paid? Well, I mean, you know, they would basically siphon money off, and then it would be shifted over to, you know, various corporations and over to Author Services as income. And then they would have to file tax returns at that point and all that, you know, but who knows? I don't even know.
Yeah. And he also got 10% of all the book sales.
Yeah, he got royalties. They would pay him advance royalties. They would pay him like advance royalties on products that were being produced by Scientology in advance. So there were lots of ways that they siphoned money and sent it to him. And then when he died, you know, he willed it all back to the church, to Scientology, to the Church of Spiritual Technology. And that's the money that they used to do all the underground bunkers with the titanium plates and all that jazz. That's what the money is for. All right, next question is Haley Connor. How did anyone like Lafayette seriously in that cowboy outfit? How did they take him as that in the cowboy outfit? That's funny. Okay, next question is here. Nerman Odkin again. Did Hubbard ever income tax returns with Social Security office in USA? Yeah, no, he had to file tax returns. I mean, that was part of the investigation IRS was doing, but they felt that he was underreporting his income, and that Scientology was basically, you know, paying him different stuff. So anyway. Okay, and then we've got from Love Food Kitchen. Would you agree, right, Janice?
Right.
Okay. All right, I did that one already. And what is Broker's character in this story? I don't know exactly what you mean by that.
I think, well, Pat was out for himself. Hubbard was mad at Pat, and that actually what a lot of people don't know, Mark, I got to say this.
Okay.
Pat had not been at Creston when Hubbard and working with Hubbard. He would show up at nighttime to drop off the mail and then leave because Hubbard had gotten so mad at Pat for not having the all clear so that he could return to Gillham Hot Springs. Pat was actually kicked out of Creston by Hubbard and was living in another property called Newberry.
In Newberry, California, out in the middle of the desert. They had a safe house out there,
Right.
and that's where Pat was living. Mm-hmm.
And we'll go more into detail of that in the next part 2.
Right. Okay. Next question is exiled New Yorker question. Is there correspondence with the amazing James Randi? Because that I'd like to see. Who is James Randi? Do you know?
I don't know who James Randi is.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm sorry, exiled New Yorker. Don't know who that is. Next question, OBG Foster. How much money did LRH have that he didn't notice $30 million going missing? That's really easy because he basically, all of his accounts and money and all that was handled by Author Services Incorporated, and he also had somebody that controlled that. And he was alone in Creston and also before that on the run for 6 years, and he couldn't use his real name. He couldn't see his bank reports or anything like that. The only way he could find out anything about his finances was reports sent up by Author Services through David Miscavige and Pat Broker to him. So it was very easy to hide that. He wouldn't have had any way of checking his bank account,
Right.
Okay. Did Hubbard pay you minimum wage for your work? No, well below that. $17.20 $17.20 when we first started, $17.20, and then I think when we left it was up to $30 a week, and then eventually $50 from after we left. But anyway, yeah, that was the base pay for all the hours that we worked.
$10 when I started.
Yeah. All right, next question is here. Did Pat ever contact anyone within the X community after he vanished? From what I've read, he only ever seemed to have had contact with Robert Vaughn Young. Yeah, I was personal friends with Vaughn Young, and he told a story about how one time he got a phone call and he knew it was Pat, and they talked briefly, and then that was it. So
yeah. Vaughn told me the same thing.
Yeah. Anyway. He's out there still. I don't think he's passed away, and I'm sure Miscavige knows exactly where he is. Because even though they paid private investigators to follow him for all these years, I guarantee you they didn't stop after those two guys were done. They're still following him.
For all we know, his living girlfriend might be a PI.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Okay, next we've got a super chat. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking my questions for free and for all that you do. Well, thanks, Betsy. We try and answer everybody's question, whether or not you do a super chat or just a regular question. We're here to provide information and hopefully entertain you. All right, next question is, did all Sea Org up to the top like Pat and Annie get the same amount of pay, a pittance? No, the executives at the top of RTC, and when they were at Author Services with David Miscavige, we got bonuses. I made a lot more money than the average Sea Org member, and I'm sure there was others. I don't know about Pat and Annie because they were on the run. I'm sure they didn't have to worry about anything.
Yeah, when they left with Hubbard, they were on the same pay as everybody else. But then I don't know what they were being paid later on. But I also know Author Services, they were all Sea Org members, but when they set up Author Services, it was for profit, not non-profit like Scientology was. So they were all put on a different pay system than the regular Sea Org members, and they got a much higher pay.
Yeah. Thanks, Love Sherlock. And this is our last question. It's a super sticker from Betsy Crutcher again. I can't wait for part 2. We're going to dig into part 2. We're going to have to do it, Janice.
Yeah, we are.
It's a long story. That's why we started with this one, and then we went, well, we're going to have to do a part 2 because there's a lot more to this, and it's very detailed, and hopefully we've made it interesting and also easy to follow and easy to understand. But just know, Miscavige was not anointed. I mean, that the Scientology whatever, the website. It's not true.
And just a disclaimer, if anything happens to me, I am not suicidal.
I get your dogs. Can I tell people what your dogs were doing? We did an earlier video today.
No, they have to watch the earlier video to find out what my dogs were doing.
We did a video, an interview with Neville Chamberlain earlier today about the liability cruise, and it's in part 2 because we did a 2-part interview. And about 30 minutes into it, behind Janis, you'll see what her dogs were doing, and it was pretty funny. Anyway, everybody, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Hit that subscribe button. And also hit that like button. Everybody wants to hit the like button and notifications, okay? If you have any other questions that we didn't get to, please ask in the comment section. We read it all day long. And you can, go from there. Janis has a business, Vites.com, okay, where you can get Outback Natural, you can get vitamins or anything like that. And some people have been buying her products, and they're really great. So you can go to www.vites.com for that. Janis, is there anything else that you would like to say?
Yeah, I'd like to just say that brand that's mostly sold on Vites.com is from my father's days, Peter Gillham's Life Essentials. So there's a lot of various different vitamins and things under his brand that I've taken over running. So I'd appreciate your support.
Exactly. Anyway, and join our member, become a member of our channel. We need to get to 30 members. So please, if you just want to support us, it's really easy. Just click that join button. And even if just the basic level is just $3.99, it's $4. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal. If you can't afford it, that's okay. You don't have to join. But we would really appreciate any support you guys want to give us. Anyway, until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.